Hey, you absolute bunch of savages. Welcome back to Hellmouth Hotline. I'm your host, Rodney Stewart. We're getting into another little chat about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm starting to really enjoy this series. I'm starting to repeat myself deadly on this show, but I have seen all the episodes before, but originally, in the first run of the series, when it was on TV for the very first time, I had fallen off by season 3. Season 2 is absolutely amazing in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and yes, I kind of fell off, so I have seen them all since that, but it's been 20 plus years probably since I've watched them 100% from beginning to end. And yes, there's quite a few pieces of these shows that have fallen completely out of memory for me. But yes, this episode, Bad Girls, it's episode 14 of season 3. This is a big changing point for a lot of the main characters in this episode, particularly Fifth. She goes down a bad path by the end of this season, and you know, and in all fairness, I like the character of Fifth. She's got a lot of potential in that character, and at this stage of the game, she became a Slayer because of another accidental brief death for Buffy, and of course whenever she turns up as a new Slayer, you're thinking to yourself, okay, she's expendable, it's only a matter of time before she goes. And in this episode we get a possible out for her, but again, a lot of potential for this character, and interesting where it does eventually go for her. But for now, we're seeing the big turnaround for her in this episode. And essentially, at the beginning, they're out patrolling her and Buffy. They kill a vampire that's armed with swords, one short and one's long, and Fifth is the whole time kind of dragging Buffy down that road of, you know, why follow the rules whenever you're like a superhero sort of a thing and whatnot. And we get a bit of an insight into her mentality when it comes to friendships and relationships and whatnot, and the fact that she had slept with Xander in the previous episode, and she's kind of like, the Buffy, no, have you never done anything like this in the past? And Buffy's like, no, I'm the good girl sort of thing. So in this episode, Fifth is dragging Buffy down her path, the way she lives her life, and Buffy starts to fall for it for the better part of the episode. Anyway, they kill this vampire, armed with swords, one short and one long, and the next day in the library at the school, the new Watcher, Wesley Wyndham Price, turns up. Now, this guy, you're either going to love him or you're going to hate him. For me, for the most part, in Buffy, I wasn't a big fan of him, but he eventually, spoilers, he transfers over to Angel's spin-off series along with Cordelia. And when that series began and Cordelia was in the opening episode, I was kind of like, Cordelia, as much as I like her, and the rewatch of this right now, watching it these days, I do recall back then, always been fairly annoyed with the character of Cordelia, especially in Buffy, and when the spin-off for Angel started and she turns up in the first episode, and of course she's in the opening credits of the show, I'm kind of like, oh gosh, this can't go well. Then eventually, in the run of Angel, I'm trying to recall when it happens, but Wesley Wyndham Price turns up, the new Watcher that's in this episode, turns up as a regular in the spin-off Angel. So two of the characters that I didn't like for the most part, in Buffy, turning up an Angel spin-off, I was just like, oh gosh, this is going to be a disaster. But I've got a lot of love for that show, Angel. I actually have all the episodes of Angel series on VHS. That's how old these shows are, guys. I remember waiting for I was a huge fan of Angel in particular, and I remember going week after week, I never knew the new series was coming, and you didn't get the full season in one go on VHS. You got 3 VHSs that covered half the season, and then you had to wait 6 months or whatever for the second part of the box set. But anyway, I digress in a major way. But all that to say is, for the love I have for that show, Cordelia and Wesley actually turn out to be insanely great characters in Angel's series. So I have got absolutely no idea how the heck I got onto that line of thinking. Oh yeah, it's because Wesley turns up in this series, and you're either going to love him or you're going to hate him. He turns up in this episode, and there's a whole power dynamic thing between him and Giles in this episode, where Buffy and Faith are both, well, Buffy more than Faith. Faith is the sort of character that, you know, she's either going to do what she needs to do or not, or, you know, listen to the Watcher or not listen to the Watcher, do her own thing. You get a lot of that in this episode. But when it comes to Giles and Wesley, Buffy and Faith will be more inclined to listen to him than this new Watcher. And plus, he's the sort of character that just annoys the living piss out of you, and he doesn't get off to a good start with anybody, Giles or Buffy or Faith, in this episode. But he knows his stuff. He's an intelligent guy, but he's too much. When we meet him for the first time, he's too much by the book, and the complete opposite of Giles. You know, Giles does go by the book to a certain extent, but he's got more of that range of freedom than what Wesley has. So yes, he's up against it with everybody in this episode, and nobody seems to like him. He identifies the swords as belonging to a cult of swordsman vampires who were once led by a demon named Balthazar, and Wesley instructs Buffy to retrieve an amulet that belonged to this demon Balthazar. Wesley believes that this guy's dead. You've nothing to worry about, just find the amulet so that these warrior vampires can't get hold of it. That night, Buffy finds the amulet, but a group of vampires loyal to Balthazar arrive before she can take it. Faith turns up. She jumps into the vampire nest, and you know, they retreat, and Buffy is more or less, you know, like, we've beaten them, we've beat them back, they've retreated back to their lair. Why follow them into the nest? You know, it's not safe. But Faith is more like, well, we could die, or we could kill them all, sort of thing. And if, you know, if you don't follow me, I'm going to be in there immune, and there's a higher chance I'll die if you don't. So yeah, she jumps into the nest. She's She's joined by Buffy. There's a new word for you. She's actually joined by Buffy, not joined. Anyway, they join up, they fight, and Buffy finds the amulet after handing it over to Wesley. Buffy leaves to take a school test. She repeatedly tries to tell Willow and Xander about the previous night, and notices that Xander's got this twitch in his eye whenever she mentions Faith's name. So, you know, he's an idiot. I'm starting to really, in this rewatch of Buffy, Xander was good for a bit of comic relief, but for me, and I don't know if it's just my age now at 43 years old, but that character is really starting to annoy me. And yes, in this rewatch of it, there's times, particularly in the last episode, it was very good what they did with Xander in the last episode. I did enjoy that. It was necessary to take the character from where he was at to where they actually want to get him. But for the most part, for me, at this stage, he's annoying the living crap out of me. But anyway, he's got this twitching eye every time she mentions Faith's name. Faith shows up at the window of the classroom and gets Buffy to leave to go and destroy our vampire nest. So this is a huge test, an important test that Buffy is supposed to be sitting down to take. And the good girl element of her wants to do the test, and it's necessary to do the test. But, even at the beginning of this test, in this part of the episode, she's very much unfocused and trying to tell the story of what's happening with her and Faith and whatnot. They're connecting in a way that they haven't connected up to this point, and not for the best for Buffy. And yes, Faith turns up, gets her to leave the test. So it's just, she's going against all her own principles, really, in this episode for the most part. Yes, they go to another vampire nest. When they defeat them, they're exhilarated. They go out dancing at the bronze, where Buffy meets up with Angel. He tells her that this demon Balthazar is alive and he's looking for this amulet they've got hold of. Wesley arrives and she takes the amulet from him and gives it to Angel for safekeeping. So, Wesley's getting absolutely no respect from anybody in this episode whatsoever. So the amulet is now with Angel for safekeeping. And yes, Buffy and Faith eventually find Balthazar surrounded by his vampires, so they decide they're going to break into a sports equipment store to steal weapons to take this guy on their own again. The police arrive and arrest them, but the two, Buffy and Faith, manage to break out of the police car, causing it to crash and injure the police officers. The following morning, the mayor's attacked by one of Balthazar's vampires, who is foiled by Mr. Trick. Balthazar demands that his minions bring him the Watchers, kill the Slayers and bring him his amulet. The enemy who crippled him is about to gain ultimate power, and he refuses to let this come to pass. So Balthazar's story and everything that's going on with him in this episode, it's all told through stuff that you don't see. He wants this amulet to get his power back to defeat this creature that we haven't seen, or we're not going to see in this episode. Willow, she gives Buffy a protection spell, and she's ready to go slaying with her that night. But Buffy, she tells her that it's too dangerous and that she's going to go with Faith instead. So there's a bit of a, the relationship she has with her closest friends are kind of suffering in this episode in favour of Faith and everything that Faith's doing, and her, the power that she has over Buffy in this episode. So, there's a lot happening in it for the most part, and yes, it's almost, I don't know, the process of this friendship and relationship between Buffy and Faith, and how deep it goes for Buffy in this episode. And I know she's always had a feeling of guilt for Faith to a certain extent, and how she's an outsider, and they haven't had the best of relationships up to this point. But the fact that Faith gets so much of a hold over her in this episode, I feel it could have been dragged out or expanded a little bit more over maybe a couple of episodes to get it deeper. And maybe they have done to a certain extent, but watching it this time again, I didn't actually see it coming to make it as deep as it is in this episode, to be fair. Buffy and Faith run into several vampires, kill them off. Then Alan, the mayor's human deputy, grabs Buffy. So Faith, been too worked up, grabs hold of him, spins him around, and stakes him in the heart. And he dies before anything can be done, and the Slayers run for it. Buffy runs into Angel, who tells her about Balthazar capturing Giles, while Faith returns to the alleyway to see the body of Alan lying there. Back at the Balthazar's headquarters. He questions the two Watchers as to who has the amulet. Wesley, he snaps straight away. He breaks. He said earlier in the episode, he's had experience in slaying vampires, and that was in a controlled environment. So everything he's done up to this point has been safe, and he's just, at this point, he's just not ready for the real world as far as the supernatural goes, let's just say. That sounds really weird, the real world as far as the supernatural goes, but that is what it is. Yes, he's willing to tell them everything, but he does not know Angel's name. So at this point, of course, him being a Watcher, he'd have the knowledge of Angelus and Angel and the whole back history of who he is, where he came from and whatnot, but at this point he has no idea who Angel is. He's just this random guy that Buffy gave this amulet to. So while they're getting interrogated, and Wesley's willing to tell these guys everything, but he just doesn't know who Angel's name is. Angel shows up, and he's like, the guy's name's Angel, and then the fight starts. Buffy's there, she frees Giles. It's a really, really great fight sequence in this episode, in all fairness. There's so many good stunts going on in here. Balthazar, he grabs hold, he captures Angel, and Buffy tosses live electrical cables into this massive tub of water. He's a huge, huge fat mess that's in a hot tub, essentially, in this episode. So that's how Buffy takes him out at the end. She drops these electric cables in there and fries him, and with his dying breath, Balthazar warns them of his enemy. So this enemy he's been talking about, we'll probably get to see him later on in the series. As I say, it's been that long since I checked out season 3. There's a lot of it is completely out of my head at this point. Anyway, back at the office, the mayor performs a ritual that makes him unable to be killed. And yes, this minion of Balthazar that was captured earlier on by Mr. Trick is in a cage. And they're like, how do we know this spell has worked, or this ritual has worked? And the mayor's like, there's only one way to find that out. And he gives a sword to this vampire that's in a cage, and he steps back and he signals Trick to open the cage, and the vampire jumps out and jams the sword under the top of the mayor's head, splitting it right down the centre to the shoulders, essentially, and then the head closes back up like the T-1000 in Terminator 2. So he's basically unkillable at this point. And at the end of the episode, Buffy tries to talk to Fifth about Alan's death, and Fifth kind of just brushes it off, and she's like, you don't understand. Buffy says, well, what was it, the way it goes? Buffy's trying to talk her around and whatnot. Fifth is washing blood out of her clothes, and she's like, you killed a man. It's not the same as being a vampire. And she's like, Fifth's like, you don't understand. I don't care. She's disposed of the body. And she weighted it down and threw it into the bay. So she's essentially she's going down a dark, dark path at the end of this episode. It closes out insanely quick at the very end of it, and she says, you don't understand, I don't care. So it's interesting. Very, very interesting episode. I enjoyed this a lot. I still, and again, I'm starting to repeat a lot in this podcast, but I still find it insane that this is such an old show. This is like, 2022 now? This episode came out in 1999. I've got a trainer. I've got a personal trainer. And the guy that runs the place I go to, I was actually in school with her in the same year. But there's 2 or 3 trainers that work for him, and those guys weren't even born whenever this show was out. It's insane whenever you think about it. Like, And it's crazy because whenever I was their age and I looked at somebody at the age I am now, I thought that was ancient. I thought that was an old person. But now at 43 years old, I feel about as fresh as I did back whenever I first watched the show. But anyway, that's crazy that the show is as old as it is. And it's, for the most part, it's aged incredibly well. But I'm saying that there's a few pieces in there now, whenever you look at the visual effects, today's visual effects, and stack them up against some of the stuff in this show, doesn't age that well. One thing I never got about it was whenever the stake of a vampire in the episode and it explodes and the dust, how come the clothes go off it? That's just one of those weird little things where, it's one of these shows where you're supposed to sit down and watch it, bubblegum for the brain, you just turn your head off for 45 minutes and enjoy it. But never a vampire standing there fully clothed and whatnot, and they jam the stake into the chest, the vampire dies, explodes into dust. I've never understood why the clothes go off it. It's just one of those weird little things. But anyway, I'm talking nonsense now. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. Again, share the show along to anybody you feel might enjoy it. Feel free to drop an email in there, let me know how I'm doing, what I can do to make this show better for you at Hellmouth Hotline at gmail.com. All the links to everything are in the show notes, and follow the show, all that good social media stuff. I really would appreciate it. So until the next episode, guys, stay safe and whatever you're doing, and I'll talk to you all then. This has been a production of Coins Age Media.